Hello everyone, welcome to our session today. This is Park IP and We Localize. Today on the call, my name is Chris Jeffrey. I am the Director of Customer Success for Europe and Asia. I've been with the company for 7 years now. Before that, I actually ran a translations company. Coming into this business, I've worked as a BDD and a regional sales manager in intellectual property and patent translation. Joining me on the call today is our Vice President of Data and Business Intelligence, Matthew Seacack. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Chris, and hi, everybody. Like Chris said, I am the We Localize VP of Data and Business Intelligence. I've actually been with Park IP going back to 2006. I started as an intern, and I joined full-time in 2007 when I graduated from college. I've seen the growth of this organization and had opportunity to really learn a lot about the industry and the things that we do. And so I'm really excited to be here and offer some thoughts on, the things that we've observed over the past 12 months. And so thanks for the opportunity, Chris, and I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Matt. What I'm going to do before we get started with a Q&A with Matt is just give you a bit of an introduction into We Localize and Park IP. Going into our first slide, this is who we are essentially. We Localize are a language service provider. We're one of the top 5 in the world. We're classed as a super agency, which is quite a new thing that I realized we were up to about a year ago, which means essentially that we provide multi-vertical language services across the globe. These are our services, very cleanly. Patent translation, so we deal with PCT national phase, EP validation, and direct filing. We have a filing and validation service, so we do have a well-established network of foreign attorneys worldwide in all of the main jurisdictions around the world. We do office action translations, working alongside our foreign attorneys. We do prior art translations. We also have an area that focuses specifically on litigation and e-discovery. And we do legal and contractual documentation translation as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavor on what we do in terms of our services. Matt, going to ask you the first question I've got on my list here, which is, what have your customers been challenged with around their IP during the last year and during the pandemic particularly?
Yeah, the last year has obviously been a pretty interesting year, and also obviously every customer is quite different in how different customers responded to the pandemic. It largely was a function of how they were affected by the pandemic, how their business was affected by the pandemic. We certainly had at least a couple of high volume customers who were pretty deliberate and pretty explicit about kind of laying out at the outset of the pandemic that there would be an expectation of a reduction in their foreign filing activity. From our point of view as an organization, as you can see from the material that you just presented, Chris, we're most exposed to the foreign filing activity of our customers, right? That's what impacts us the most. That's what we see the most directly. And so, like I said, we had a couple of customers who said, we're going to cut our foreign filing budget in half. But by and large, it actually was not quite as severe as we expected when everything was kind of starting to set in and we were all starting to get a sense for just how big a deal the COVID pandemic was going to be and how impactful it was going to be on everyone's lives and on everyone's businesses. Some of that, I think, probably has to do with the fact that a lot of our customers are in the life sciences space. And so, that combined with the fact that when our business is affected, where we get involved is kind of downstream of the priority filings, right? There's the initial filings, and as I assume most folks watching this will understand, you have priority filings, and then later in the process is when, it comes time to file those applications abroad. So in the context of the pandemic over the past 12 months, our customers were facing a situation where these are applications that they had filed before because they thought they had value. And particularly for our life sciences customers, where patent protection, not just at home, but abroad, is just absolutely essential and foundational to their business and the viability of these products and their marketability abroad. The evaluation criteria really didn't change that much. It really just sort of came down to, is this a compound or a therapy or whatever that is likely to bear fruit and sort of get through clinical trials or not? And if so, you kind of have to file it, right? So in those situations, I think that some of our customers, were really kind of looking after the core interests of their business, and there wasn't a great deal of flexibility. But for others, like the couple I mentioned at the beginning, my answer to this question, it was, well, we have a little bit more flexibility. It's not quite as essential. And so this is an opportunity for us to kind of shave costs and say that we're just going to allocate less budget to foreign filing of applications as they come due for 3 or 6 months, depending on, what the company was dealing with.
Yeah, and has there been a change in the way that our customers have been interacting with us on their IP? Has their filing instructions changed? I, for example, know that one of our customers in Europe, they've made a decision that they're going to delay, if they can, certain decisions on filings because of the pandemic. What have you seen on obviously on the US side of things, Matt?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think in a lot of ways that what the past year has done is, more than anything, to kind of accelerate trends that were already things that we were observing. So, in terms of how our clients work with us or how they engage with us, or really what their expectations of us are as a service provider, obviously customers are always looking for us to be more efficient, to deliver better work product quality, to find other kind of peripheral ways to add value. But when you have a situation like the past 12 months where things are tight and everybody is sort of casting about for, how do we get more efficient? How do we save cost? How do we kind of maximize the capital that we're investing in any particular activity? It just kind of puts more of a spotlight on every little thing and heightens the imperative of really kind of delivering on those goals, right? So things like, how do we use technology to make ourselves more efficient, right? How do we find ways to actually use what we know about patents and language and outcomes? How do we use our expertise when it comes to natural language processing, machine learning, artificial intelligence? How do we use our proficiency in leveraging and visualizing data to actually add value for customers in surprising ways, right? How do we not just make ourselves more efficient and reduce cost, although that is obviously important, right? And a lot of the tools, like you mentioned, translation, memory, but then how do we leverage other kinds of tools that can help us kind of break down and actually start to analyze the composition of our clients' patent applications, the level of complexity, and whether that complexity might align with grant outcomes, for example, or office action incidents, for example. All of those things are things that, frankly, like, we should be doing at all times, but where you have a pandemic and you have a lot of customers and businesses that are under, more trying conditions, you really start to zero in on every opportunity for that, and it becomes more and more important that you kind of accelerate our progress in that respect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it kind of led on to my next question, really, which was, in your opinion, what's going to shape the future of intellectual property, pandemic or no pandemic. So what in your opinion will shape the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously like a pretty big question, right? And I you know, I will not pretend to be a expert on the global intellectual property industry writ large. Certainly, I've been doing business. I've been at this company for almost 15 years now, and been doing business engaged with customers that are, you know, foreign filing and domestic filing, where I've been engaged as an IP service provider for quite a long time, but I'm not myself a patent attorney. That being said, I can certainly share some thoughts and observations based on data and research that we've done, mostly in the context of our business and how it impacts our organization as a service provider, but with some interesting insights that I think might be more broadly applicable. So one thing is, it certainly seems clear that when we're talking about the future of IP, different organizations are going to experience the future of IP differently. And the way that they think about their future as IP holders is going to depend on their market positioning as an organization, their existing IP portfolio, but then also, what is the space that they're playing in? So, for example, in the US, looking at software and business method patents, right? There's been kind of an ebb and flow, especially ever since the Alice Corporation decision in, I believe, 2009, of, what is and is not patentable, and is it worth the investment? How enforceable might these assets be? And then also, how do we then go and expand that protection internationally? So, what is the regulatory environment? I think for a lot of organizations is going to influence, the future of IP through their lens. But, when we look at it, at least from our point of view as a service provider, one of the things we're principally focused on is just filing activity in general, right? So is filing activity going up or going down? Over the past several years, it seems pretty consistently to go up. But when we've kind of gone through and studied this, one of the things that seems to be the case, and actually this is a little more anecdotal, but our experience over the past 12 months would corroborate that just macroeconomic conditions are in a particular country are actually really important drivers of filing activity. That, if macroeconomic conditions in a particular country or in the globe altogether are negative, then that tends to reduce the likelihood of organizations to spend money on filing not just priority applications, but actually foreign filing applications. For example, in 2009, we saw like a pretty significant downtick in the number of foreign applications filed by U.S. organizations, which of course corresponded to the pretty significant drop in GDP during that year following the financial crisis. And then a little more anecdotally, but over this past year, what we saw were at least some organizations saying, well, here we are in a spot where consumer spending is expected to be down and our business is expected to take a hit. And so we need to find ways to save. So we're going to spend less money filing applications abroad. Other than that, the other big thing that I would point to would be, whether regulatory conditions evolve in a significant way in any particular country. So just for example, when I was first working at Park IP almost 15 years ago, one of the things that we would hear sometimes from customers is that China was not a particularly attractive jurisdiction for foreign filing because there wasn't a great deal of confidence in the enforcement regime in China. But over the past 15 years, certainly in part because China has continued to grow as a market and has continued to be an important target market for a lot of customers, but also because increasingly folks seem to believe that there is, actually some enforceability in applications that are filed there. And so you see that not just in the data, but that's borne out by our experience in interacting with customers, that we're going to file more patents in China because we think those patents actually have value.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about technology in our industry, because in sales, I'm hearing a lot from competitors and customers about machine translation encroaching or moving their way into IP, particularly PCT translation, which for us obviously is a big no-no, because if you get patent translation wrong with PCT, then you're opening yourself up to potential litigation that could be worth thousands, if not millions, for certain companies. What's your view on machine translation in the world of IP translation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Broadly, machine translation technology continues to get better, and as folks may or may not be aware, We Localize, the parent company of PARC IP, we have genuinely some of the world's foremost experts in machine translation technology on our team, and we are constantly evaluating new ways to deploy machine translation capabilities in creative services to add value for customers. In the IP space, you're absolutely right, Chris. There's a great deal of valid concern behind using machine translation, because even a small mistake, that a computer might make, one word in a particular claim could actually be the difference between, a $100 million patent being enforceable or not. And I think, I think that that's a big concern for our customers and therefore for us. Where I think technology comes in is, it's not just a question of is machine translation going to substitute for the human translation procedures that we have in place now, right? And it's not just a question of, can machine translation just itself deliver the same outcome that a proper human translation with a rigorous quality control process is going to be able to deliver. The question for us is, how can we incorporate what we know and what advances we're able to make in machine translation to make our human translation processes better, right? So is there a way that in analyzing the composition or, breaking down what the nature of the linguistic elements of a particular application are, can that help us better source material, right? Can that help us better understand which translators are better or worse at particular subject matter areas of expertise, right? Is there a way that we can actually use machine learning and natural language processing technology to improve the performance of our translators, right? Can we give them guidance? Can we validate or automatically identify where there might be errors? Or can we even give them a draft that they can then work through, where we would still apply the usual process, but the whole process happens more efficiently because we've got a robust, trained machine translation engine just kind of greasing the skids, if you like, of that whole process, right? Does that make us more efficient, or does that help us deliver better outcomes, or both? And what we're finding as we explore this is, yes, there's a great deal of potential there. And so it's not, okay, we're going to Google translate your patents and then that's going to be what you file. It's that there's a great deal of potential in this technology, and there are a lot of opportunities for this technology to add value, both from an efficiency and then also a qualitative standpoint. And when you think about the direction of our industry and how we're thinking about applying it to patents, how we're thinking about leveraging the expertise and know-how that we have in our organization, that's the vector that we're on right now.
Yeah. Okay, and that kind of leads into my last question then, Matt, is what does the future hold in store for Park IP and WeLocalize in terms of where are we going to be in 5 years from now, for example, in 3 years from now?
Yeah, I think that all of the things that I kind of just walked through with respect to technology are really a big part of it, right? It's not that we think that human translators are going to go away, but it's how do we use technology to make them better? The same way translation memory technology made human translators more efficient. It's how can we use everything that we know and all of the expertise that we have to augment and facilitate the human translation processes that we're employing in such a way that they are more efficient and deliver better outcomes. Beyond that, I think for Park IP and WeLocalize more generally, it's how do we expand the scope of engagement with more customers around the world? So for Park IP, we obviously started off as a US-based company working principally with US organizations. And Chris, as you mentioned, you've been with us for a long time. You were a big part of our push to kind of put down roots and start building out both production and customer service infrastructure in Europe. And so, starting to do that in Asia, where in the Far East, we've actually had a pretty robust presence for more than a decade now, but a presence that's been principally focused on production, right? And it's been more operational, but how do we leverage all of the know-how and expertise and capabilities that we've built out there to start engaging with some of the customers that, where their patents originate in that region as well. But I really do think the bigger picture is, how do we take what we know about the industry and all of this capability we have from a technological standpoint and deliver that to our patent customers in a way that makes us more efficient, but then also just adds value in ways that go beyond what they might even expect. Like, for example, looking at, can we start to measure how our involvement or whether certain aspects of a patent that we're translating actually lead to forecastable outcomes, right, from a grant or an office action incident standpoint.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for answering that, Matt. I think to summarize, quality and technology is the driving force behind our customer service. We're looking to add value to our customers wherever we can. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us on our call today. Need any more information? You'd like to contact WeLocalize or Park IP about anything, you can see our email address there and our social media handles there as well. Thanks very much for your attention today from Matt and myself, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.